I'm Adam.
I'm Iron Man.
No, you're not. So, Paul, it is 2025. Not sure how that happened. It feels like science fiction.
Crazy.
And I wonder if back in 2008, when the first Marvel Cinematic Universe movie came out, that we ever could imagine that, lo, these many years later, we would be 34 in. And I have to say, it was interesting after 34 Marvel movies to go back and watch the first one, Iron Man from 2008.
2008, May 2nd, it was released.
And what else happened on May 2nd?
So
I have to bring this up.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily May 2nd because we saw the movie a little bit ahead of time.
Sometime before May 2nd.
But yeah, I was driving into work after seeing Iron Man, got into an accident, got T-boned by another car coming into work, zipped over to the hospital, and wrote the review.
He wrote the review anyway.
So if you...
Deeply inspired, and so we've pretty much called him Iron Man ever since. I mean, among other things.
Yeah. So if you read the review and you say, "Wow, this sounds like somebody who's just was in an auto accident," it was.
It sure feels like he uses the word whiplash a lot. Now, Paul got creamed by an SUV, and his car looked like it was a prop in Iron Man.
It was impressive.
Your car was scary wrecked.
Yeah, it was scary
Anyway.
wrecked. I had like glass sticking out of my hands.
Yep.
It was really, but that's another
But he
story.
was
We'll
okay.
go.
So I think I've seen the movie twice, and that would be a liberal estimation. I remember seeing it once for sure. I think I saw it one more time after it came out. And my recollection of the movie in the moment was, it exceeded expectations, but I didn't think it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And after 34 Marvel movies, watching it again, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is a really good movie. There's a lot going on here, and there are all kinds of things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk.
Let's talk. You know, it's really interesting when we look at the. Well, we should just talk about the movie itself,
Yes.
right? Let's set up
Yep.
the movie.
Because it was like 20 years ago.
It was
Not
20
quite,
years ago.
but-
Well, and when we look back on it, like Iron Man was a second tier, maybe third tier.
Who cared about? I couldn't even believe they were making an Iron Man movie.
Right, because really no one had heard of
Nobody
Iron
cares
Man.
about Iron
Nobody
Man.
cared. Right. So, but Marvel had sold off a lot of its properties. Fantastic Four went somewhere. X-Men went somewhere. Spider-Man was doing his own
Well,
thing.
they all went to 20th
Yeah.
Century Fox and Sony, right?
Exactly. So you have, Marvel still owned Iron Man and some of the other tertiary
Nice word.
superheroes. Thank you. I paused just
I
so
know.
you would notice.
It worked.
Yeah. So
It worked. It's a good
and essentially
It means third. Tertiary. Tertiary.
is that what it means?
Yeah.
Third superheroes?
Yeah.
I guess that would make sense,
No,
right?
it's tertiary.
Okay, so anyway, Iron Man in this movie, he is Tony Stark, clearly, played by Robert Downey Jr. He is this tycoon who's made a fortune. His father actually made a fortune selling arms, creating and selling arms. He is
Arms?
sort of no.
Weapons.
Like weapons. Yes. So
Sorry.
so
That's a
Tony
little dad
Stark,
joke for you.
So Tony Stark is sort of the wonderkind son of this initial creator.
Yep.
And he's brilliant, he's a playboy, he's rich beyond imagination.
He's got a super
and
cool
he
Audi
knows-
RS8.
Oh my goodness, the cars.
Woo-wee. I'd take that car.
Oh my goodness, these cars are so cool. But yeah, so he's very rich. He goes out to try to sell some weapons to, some folks who could use them.
Right.
Off in the middle of
In Afghanistan.
in Afghanistan, right? So it's the Jericho missile,
The Jericho.
from what I remember.
Biblical.
Yes, exactly. We'll come back to that.
I know. Paul only needs one word, and he will take that thing and like ice in winter, he will just lever that door wide open.
Yes,
Jericho
spirituality. Anyway, so
Might be the only spirituality in the whole movie.
oh, We'll
See,
get
I'm
into
setting
that.
Paul up
Oh my
because he's going to
goodness.
prove me wrong.
This feels like a wiffle ball being
Right?
thrown out
I
of
know.
softball. So, anyway, he's out there trying to sell this weapon, and then all of a sudden his convoy gets ambushed. Explosions, shots fired, everybody dies.
More explosions.
But they drag Tony Stark off into this cave. He has a big bunch of shrapnel stuck in his chest that is somehow weaving its way toward his heart. And luckily, he just happens to get stuck into a cave with another really brilliant scientist.
Right, a heart surgeon among other things.
Figures out that if he puts this magnet, does this magnet thing with his chest, he can keep the shrapnel from actually going into his heart, but can't somehow remove it.
And that hole is so deep that when you reach into it, I'm like, is there anything else happening under there?
It's an unpleasant look, let's
Yes.
just say. But anyway, so he's there. They're going to keep him captive until he recreates this missile.
The Jericho.
The Jericho. And so they're creating this missile, only they're not really creating this missile. Tony knows that they're going to kill both of them as soon as these terrorists get what they want. And so he begins to design a suit
A suit.
made out of actual iron.
Right.
And that's where the story sort of picks up.
Yeah. And for the super nerds who are into Iron Man, which before the movie there were like 6 of them, you can go all the way back, and that suit looks exactly like the very first Iron Man in the comics. So it's not an homage to the origin story from the comics, but it definitely, for a certain group of people, would have been a very, very satisfying Easter egg.
Well, and I think that that's what early Marvel did really well.
Yep.
Is it had these allusions to the comic books. They
Yep.
didn't follow really the comic book stories
Not
very
really.
often, but they had the imagery, the feel of it felt just right. Now, you're a comic book guy.
Yes,
Did you have a lot of Iron Man comic books in your collection before? No.
I did not.
Yeah.
I mean,
there you go.
Tony Stark was always a tertiary character. I mean, Iron Man was always kind of there in the mix with the Avengers. And so
Right. He was an original Avenger.
he was an original Avenger. And so, yeah, I mean, as a setup for what they did with the rest of the MCU over the
Yeah.
films that followed,
Yeah.
it was as good a place to start as any. And I think, let's talk about why.
Yeah.
Because this thing, I don't think anybody predicted what it was going to do. And
No, I don't think they really had a vision of what the MCU. I
No.
don't think the Marvel Cinematic Universe was even a thing.
well, it might
They
have
had
been
hint.
a twinkling in Kevin Feige's eye. He's
Right.
the Disney Marvel guy who it was sort of his brainchild, and he was hailed as the king of storytellers until Endgame, and then after that, not so much.
We'll get into that.
But still, even if it was all in place in his mind, I don't think anybody could have predicted it. So why did it blow up, literally and figuratively?
So I'll give you 2 reasons.
I would hope so.
Robert Downey Jr.
And Robert Downey Jr. Those are the 2 reasons.
You know, he really brought unmatched charisma into the role, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who might not remember, Robert Downey Jr. before Iron Man, he was damaged goods.
He was a hot mess.
It's sort of interesting because you have Iron Man was low on the MCU totem pole. Robert Downey Jr. was almost completely, you couldn't work with him.
No,
because he
people
was
thought
so
they had
damaged.
lost their minds to cast him in this role.
Right, because he had been thrown in jail a couple of times, I think.
Drugs and alcohol.
Drugs and alcohol. He was unhinged. He was hard to work with. People knew that he was a talented actor, but it never really showed the last several years because of his drug habit.
Well, and not unlike Tony Stark.
Not unlike Tony
in
Stark.
both the movie and even more so in the comics. Again,
Right.
if you go to the comics, there's an entire Tony Stark alcoholism arc where Tony hits bottom and somebody else has to take over the armor because he's a wreck,
Which you sort of see in Iron Man too.
which we kind of see in Iron Man 2. And so but at that point, that was a really groundbreaking thing to show in the comics.
Yeah.
So what was your second reason besides Robert Downey
Well,
Jr.?
I think that it was just such a well-told story.
Yes.
You know, when you're talking about these movies, we're so used to CGI. We're so used to these spectacular special effects. But good movies are grounded in great storytelling. And this had a great story behind it. You know, I think that in part because of Robert Downey Jr., he brought humanity to this person who is truly cloaked in metal. You know, where you could not see his face. He brought humanity.
Well, except when the camera, you know.
But you know, he brought humanity to this who would look to the average bad guy as this inhumane character, literally inhuman character. His relationship with Pepper Potts was really the heart and soul of this movie.
Yeah.
And it brought it just brought a lot of emotion into the works, you know, where this wasn't just purely a superhero battling the bad guys. This was about a broken man looking for some sort of lifeline, looking for some sort of redemption.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that brought a lot of power to the story itself.
Yeah. So, can I riff on what surprised me watching it again?
Yeah.
It was fun to watch.
It is a fun
It's
movie.
a really fun movie, but it was fun to watch because of where we're at now. I mean, if you think back to 2008,
Where we are in the MCU or where we are just completely?
both. I mean, where it's gone, but where we're at culturally. Like, there's a joke about MySpace, and I'm like, did MySpace still even exist in 2008? You know, and so there are these moments where you're like, oh, that's cute. They're talking about MySpace.
I don't want to see this on your MySpace page.
One of the other things that is now, I think, totally anachronistic. It's funny to me how it's already dated, and not in a bad way, but just movies are a product of their moment.
Right.
How many people were reading newspapers? And I know that you have a deep and abiding
Wow,
love for
that's
newspapers,
interesting. Yeah.
but I just am like, nobody would make a superhero movie with people sitting around reading newspapers now. That's gone. So it was, in a weird way, it was kind of a little time capsule. One of the other things that I thought was surprising, my memory of the content was off. And I think it's actually a good lesson. Even if you saw a movie 15 years ago and you think you remember what was in it, or in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s, you probably don't remember as clearly as you thought you did.
Yeah.
And just from a content perspective, I remembered the womanizing. And in some ways, it's the most extreme we ever see in the Marvel Universe. It's pretty raw. Okay, you can take it. Among the most.
Among the most.
Okay. That was what I remembered. There's not very much profanity.
No.
Really at all. I mean, there are a couple, but not much. The other thing that was interesting to me is we often talk about sanitized violence. It was a very realistically violent movie with a really high body count, and not in the superhero kind of way.
Right.
But people
Right.
being killed by terrorists, people being killed in firefights. And so, strangely enough, and this is going to sound really weird, you're going to laugh. Well, you better laugh now that I've... Thank you. I thought it was a fairly realistic movie as a superhero movie goes. Now, my suspension of disbelief fails with Iron Man. I'm like, dude would have 14 concussions every time he flies, right?
Yeah.
But apart from the guy flying in armor, we've got weapons sales, we've got geopolitical stuff happening, we've got backdoor arms deals. Like, it's actually set in a pretty realistic kind of world. And that kind of, I didn't remember that. It surprised me.
When you're talking about that opening sequence, right, where he is in the desert, where he is trapped by these evildoers, it feels gritty. It feels real. You feel the dirt underneath your fingernails in a way, and it does bring a sense of peril that I think we lose as the superhero genre goes on.
Well, there's so many of them, and I think that also, I think, was part of the reason for the success of some of those early Marvel films is you've got one character, you've got one backstory, you've got a little bit more space to develop that. And when it's paired with somebody as talented as Robert Downey Jr. was, who was perfect for the role,
He was perfect for the role.
you capture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody saw it coming.
No, I don't think so. And I don't think that we would have seen the success. Really, honest to goodness, I know that after Iron Man and some of the sequels, he became the highest paid actor in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And deservedly so, because the MCU was really built on the back of Iron Man.
It was.
You know,
and you can say what you want about Captain America. Nobody raves about Chris Evans.
No,
the way
that's not true.
Well, they do, but they don't.
No.
I don't.
No. See,
I don't
so yeah, in terms of, this would be another interesting conversation that we won't get into. But when
We'll
you
watch
talk
all
about,
the Captain America movies. Come back.
when you talk about Captain America, I really do think that Chris Evans was the perfect Captain
No, I think he
America.
was perfect
He didn't
for it.
have He doesn't have the range of a Robert Downey
Yeah.
Jr. Right? The character of Tony Stark is much more complex.
Yeah.
And because of the nuances that it requires, you needed to have somebody. Who's had a little wear on him.
Yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr. really fits that bill.
Yeah.
Chris Evans, even though when you see, he's got some good range that you've seen in some other roles that he's done.
I'm talking to you, Scott Pilgrim.
But when you're talking about
Human
that
Torch?
Sweet!
when you're talking about that iconic version of Captain America,
Yeah.
the dude embodied it. But when you're talking about Tony Stark, you do have, not only does he need to be a hero, but he needs to be a cad. He needs to be a jerk.
Yep.
And oftentimes, at least in the early movies, you see that going hand in hand. He is a
Yeah.
jerk and he is a hero.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think makes him compelling and drew people in to the MCU, because that complexity, that ambiguity, would you even say, in a
Yeah,
superhero
I mean,
movie, in a way?
and I think that if you look back on the history of superhero movies before that,
Yeah.
you've got everything that took place in the 70s and early 80s. You have the X-Men movies that are successful to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the first 3 Spider-Man movies, which were really pretty good.
They were good.
And then you get the Dark Knight trilogy beginning to be in play,
And I
which
think
wasn't
The Dark Knight was actually the same year that Iron Man came
okay.
out, which
So
is really interesting.
that's pretty interesting. I actually thought Dark Knight was before, but I think you're right.
Yeah, I think it was 2008. Listen to our Dark Knight conversation. It's super great.
So we're sort of right at the beginning of the golden age of what can we do with these characters. But I think Iron Man works because of his character development as much as the story itself.
Yeah,
And I think that's what I appreciated the second time. The story's actually not that big.
No.
You know, there's an enemy, he makes somebody mad in his company and they
Spoiler
fight.
alert.
Well, not much.
Yeah.
I mean, and so the story is more limited, but the character development carries it.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. One of the things when you contrast like The Dark Knight and Iron Man feels like a more pure movie in a way. It
Yeah.
feels intentionally more fun. It's not trying to do quite as much as The Dark Knight is in some ways.
Yep.
And that makes it work. And yet you have this fairly simple story that brings in some really strong performances. You know, not only Robert Downey Jr., but you've got Gwyneth Paltrow
She's
as Pepper
fantastic.
Potts. You have Jeff Bridges, who is pretty fresh off an Oscar. You know, he
And looking
really-
good as a man with no hair, I might add.
We need more of that.
Sorry if that was weird, I apologize.
But so you had some chops, some acting
Yeah.
chops brought into this relatively simple story.
And you had Terrence Howard as Rhodey.
Terrence Howard, he's one of my favorites. I was so
fantastic.
sad that he didn't return as Rhodey in a
know.
way, you know, but that's what
Yeah.
happens sometimes. So yeah, you've got all done in a service of a very, I wouldn't say simple story,
Straightforward.
straightforward, and that's the thing.
It's
It had
really linear.
a linear quality to it that made it work.
Yep.
It really worked just as far as you sit down, it's almost like the perfect summer movie because, well, not from a plugged-in perspective, but as far as when you come into the theater,
Except
you
for that
sit down,
womanizing profanity and violence. Read our full review at
read our
pluggedin.com.
full review. But when you're
And remember,
thinking
Paul
about,
was in an accident that day.
when you're thinking about kind of what you want from a summer movie,
Yeah, it's a popcorn muncher.
and you sit down, you watch, and this is a popcorn muncher that sticks with you in a way.
And it's one that I think you could have done multiple times and enjoyed it every time. Kind of like, Top Gun Maverick a couple years ago. I think I saw it 4 or 5 times in the theater because it was just fun. So I think one of the real emotional beats in the story is after Tony is captured and nearly dies, he realizes that his own company's armory, his own company's weapons are being used in horrific ways. And it's almost like...
And against the soldiers that he's trying
to protect. And it's almost like a Paul on the road to Damascus kind of experience in that he's not converted to a relationship with God, but he has something like a conversion experience in that he recognizes, all of a sudden his eyes are opened to a level of evil that he is complicit in, that he was totally, probably willfully blind to before.
Right.
And I think that's a great jumping off point to talk about some of the spiritual stuff. And it sounds like you have some concrete things you want to talk about.
Well, yeah, as we said at the very outset,
Jericho.
Jericho, that's it. No.
It's in the Bible.
when you look at Tony Stark, you are looking, I think that Road to Damascus experience is a really good comparison point. But when you look at his story, he is not coming to a relationship, as you say, with God, right? But it has all the beats that you would hear from what you would hear from a testimony, that you would hear in church. I had it all. I had wealth. I had fame. I had all these beautiful
wine, women,
all
song,
that kind of
and
stuff.
Audis.
But then he realized in truly one of these life or death moments that there was more.
Yeah.
That he was wasting his life on all of these things, and he realized that he needed to be doing more. One of my favorite lines in the movie is, he is talking with Pepper Potts, and she's asking him, why are you doing all these dangerous things? And he says, essentially, this is all there is. This is what I am meant to do. He said, I was saved for a reason. This is what I should be dead. I'm not. There's got to be a reason.
I shouldn't be alive. Unless it was for a reason.
And his values change,
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't become a saint.
Right.
But you do see that, some of these reporters and people that he's clearly had, dalliances with, he has no interest in them.
Right.
And all of a sudden he recognizes actually he has a real relationship with Pepper Potts, and maybe there's something there that they just begin to hint at. But I would say it's not that he's a saint, but he offloads a lot of that gratuitous excess from a former life.
Well, and let me just unpack some of what I see as sort of the visual symbolism.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are talking about when he goes into Afghanistan, he's driving along, the explosion happens, he has this weird contraption.
Pulling his heart out, or pulling the metal out of his heart.
Pulling the metal out of his heart. When you look at that arc reactor, an interesting biblical allusion, arc reactor.
I get it, arc. It's in the Bible.
But truly, he is given in this. He was dead. He comes back to life. He has a new heart. It is truly one of those. It's sort of like a born again experience.
Man.
Now.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that. You probably wrote about it. I'm sure I've read your review, but I don't remember
know
that.
if I wrote about it.
You should go back
review,
and add that in.
But then you can go even beyond that, right? Because when you look at the jets that he has on his hands, on his feet, there's a hint of stigmata there, right?
Paul.
And so,
I have to work with this guy. He finds Jesus illustrations in Iron Man's repulsors.
Let me just say, obviously,
it's interesting. I mean, I think you're a little bit off, but
no, but I think when you're talking about some of the symbolism that we see here, and you can even see him, sometimes in the movie
in a cross position.
In the cross position with these. Obviously, Tony Stark, Iron Man, is not a Christ figure, but he kind of is. He kind of is. And one of the things that I love, okay, so we're gonna get,
Paul, what do you love?
one of the things that I love about the MCU, the greatest achievement that you have on it, and we've talked about this before offline, but over the first 24 movies, right? 24 movies.
Through Endgame.
That is a long way, right? You have all these movies where you're unpacking all these complex, complicated stories, dozens upon dozens of superheroes. It, I think, in the end, is always about Iron Man. And you have this moment, like we just mentioned, I was saved for a reason. I was meant to do more.
And ultimately, he sacrifices his life.
Fast forward to Endgame, he is there. He
Spoiler
is the
warning.
only one who can save the universe from what Thanos intends. And he makes that sacrifice. Now, the interesting thing about Endgame, too, is that he was one of the only superheroes who was relatively unscarred after the events of Infinity War, right? So for those of you who don't know, Infinity War, this bad guy got a bad glove, and because of this glove,
It has all sorts of
he
special
wiped
stones.
out-
He killed half the
wiped out
people in the universe.
half the people in the universe. Iron Man's family, you know, Tony Stark's family, was spared from this horrific, horrific event. He made it out unscathed. The events of Endgame, he knew he was giving up all of that by snapping his fingers, and he made that sacrifice.
Whew.
So there you go.
Boy, I mean, mic drop.
Where did we go?
Where do we go? So,
So-
if you're new to the MCU, and I suppose theoretically that's possible.
Yeah.
Right?
My parents haven't seen a single
Your parents are new to the MCU. What do families need to know that we haven't already talked about with regard to Iron Man in particular and perhaps the MCU in general?
Well, I think that clearly, when you're talking about the MCU in general, you're talking about a lot of content issues.
Yep.
You know, these are PG-13 movies, and some of them push closer to R. Now, Iron Man, I think, lands pretty much right in that
Smack-
PG-13 territory. But as you mentioned at the outset, you're dealing with some womanizing. You actually see a woman in bed who clearly Tony
Was
Stark
there all night with him,
Yeah, exactly.
lost her clothes somewhere.
You have these elements, and when you're looking at sort of this heroic persona, Tony Stark isn't a hero, or at least not a hero that we could embrace for much of this movie and for a lot of the movies afterwards,
Yeah.
quite honestly.
Yeah, and Captain America, you know,
Yeah,
they butt heads all the time
they butt heads all
and
the
end
time.
up on two different sides.
They're sort of like you and me, actually, now that I think about it. So,
Which one are you? Never mind. Don't
not
answer
go
that.
So, and of course, you just have the violence. There's a lot of
Yeah.
violence. Iron Man, the early parts of the MCU did not have kind of the weird spiritual goofiness.
There's really, apart from all the stuff you just read into it, which
Which is great.
The name from that is eisegesis, by the way, when we take our own ideas and read them in, and they may or may not be there. Now, the stigmata thing is pretty interesting. I actually am jealous I didn't think of that. We've talked about power creep, because one of the problems with the MCU is at least the feeling that the stakes have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And after Thanos wipes out half of the universe, I'm not sure, they sort of wrote themselves into a corner.
Right.
You know, where do you go from here? You know, you got to have another big bad. He's going to threaten everybody. But then you go in these spiritual directions with Eternals, with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of
Yeah.
Madness, with Scarlet Witch. And I love Vision and Scarlet Witch from my childhood because they're the comics I read when I was 5, 6 years old. But Scarlet Witch and then into, you know, the Agatha series that just concluded fairly recently was like full on occult.
Right.
Right? And
There
so
are some real issues with
it's
these,
gotten really much more problematic as it's gone. And I think it's gotten that way because they have to have power
Yeah.
to make the story interesting, or they think they do.
Yeah, and I think this loops back to what we started off with, right? You know what? CGI is a strong storytelling augmentator. Is that the right word?
Can be.
All right, we'll just pretend it is. But it's really about the story, and I think for the story to work, it needs to have concrete goals, a concrete idea of what's being fought for.
Yeah.
And that's what Iron Man had. You know, you understood the stakes. They were not galactic wide.
No.
They definitely had worldwide implications, but essentially it was really about this one guy
Yeah.
trying to protect himself, protect the people who he loved.
Yeah.
And that's what made it work. Sometimes I think the MCU has gone too far
Yeah.
out into the galaxy and into the multiverse, right? To really
Which just feels like a big cheat code.
well, it really is. And although some of the stories can be effective, the
They
third
can be.
Spider-Man, the
Yes.
third Spider-Man movie was really.
It was
fun.
really, but it was
But-
really good because of the characters, which is another. That's another conversation.
Again,
It
characters.
wasn't good because of the scope of the conflict.
Right.
It was good because we loved the character development,
Well, and
that's when the MCU is at its best.
It truly, because they make you care about the characters when they're at their best. And that's what draws us into these stories in the first place, is we care what happens to these people.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that, it loses its steam, it loses its pop, no matter how much CGI you have in there.
And there you have it.
There you go.
I don't know that there's anything more to say about that.
Feels like we said a lot.
I think we said quite a bit, and we would love to interact with you on it. Of course, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell.
And ring, yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from you and to connecting with you again sometime down the road on the next installment of Plugged In Rewind.